Hi, good evening, Menton. Thank you for joining.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Of course. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Manhattan Community Board 11's Housing Committee meeting. It is now 6:30, but we will wait for the chair of the committee, Jeremiah Schloatman, to join the call, and also for the committee to achieve a quorum. And once that happens, the meeting will begin. Thank you for your patience.
Good evening, Marlene, and everyone who is here already.
Hi, Jeremiah. How are you? So you just need 2 more people to have a quorum?
You said 2 more in your
2
form?
more, so Ivy and then 1 more person now.
Okay, thank you. So for any members of the public who are here, welcome to the Housing Committee meeting. I'm just going to wait for a couple more minutes. I'm Jeremiah Schloman. I'm the chair of the Housing Committee. I'm just going to wait for a couple minutes for another member to come for us to have quorum. But we won't wait too long. We can get started even if we don't have that in just a couple minutes.
Okay, you have quorum. John joined Jeremiah.
Wonderful. Thank you, Marlene. Okay, good evening, everyone. Once again, my name is Jeremiah Schloman. I'm the chair of the Housing Committee of Community Board 11 in Manhattan. I'm going to call the meeting to order at 6:34 p.m. And before we get underway, I'm going to pass it over to Marlene for some introductory remarks.
Thank you, Jeremiah. Good evening, everyone. Until further notice, all meetings of Manhattan Community Board 11 will be conducted by video conference. Links to register to attend the video conferences for each of our respective committee meetings will be published on the meetings calendar on our website. For those of you calling in, the website is www.cb11m.org. To avoid crosstalk and help the meeting run effectively, panelists and attendees are asked to keep their microphones on mute when they are not speaking. It is also helpful to utilize headphones. Those participating by phone can dial *6 to unmute, and that is also how you mute your line. If you wish to share a question or comment, you may do so by utilizing the raise hands function. Our staff, myself, will monitor to ensure that hands are recognized in turn. Those participating by phone can dial *9 to raise their hand. Committee members will be called on first, and attendees, please keep your questions or comments brief. Jeremiah, I'm going to hand it back over to you now.
Wonderful. Thanks again, Marlene. So do I first have a motion to adopt the agenda? Everyone's seen the agenda, so do I have a motion?
So moved.
Seconded by Xavier.
Wonderful. Okay, so all in favor? Aye.
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 Who made the motion?
Aye.
I did, John Green.
Okay, for
And
this one.
seconded by
Mhm.
Xavier.
Okay, for this one, do you mind if I call the roll just so it's on the record, just one time for your meeting, Jeremiah?
No problem at all. Yeah, it's probably a good
Okay.
idea to see the committee members who are here too. So
Yeah, okay.
yeah, we'll call the roll on that motion to adopt the agenda.
Okay, so it was, okay, so, Stephanie Arroyo,
Yes.
thank you. Raja Flores,
Present. Here.
are you accepting the motion to adopt the agenda?
Oh, yes.
Thank you. John Green,
Aye.
thank you. Robert Harvey,
Yes.
thank you. Ivy Hume,
Yes.
thank you. Xavier Santiago,
Yes.
thanks. Jeremiah Schloman,
Yes.
the motion carries. Jeremiah, thank you.
Okay, wonderful. So now, do we have any announcements from the committee? Let me see. I don't see. I'm not looking really quickly. I got to pull up my list because I know people will raise hands. All right. So I don't see anyone. I actually have one. Thank you. Thanks to Marlene. Let me see. I'll put it in the chat as well, but I'm going to announce it. The New York City Coalition, the Right to Counsel Coalition, and justfix.nyc have launched a new website. So for those of you who don't know, we have discussed it in our housing committee on various occasions, but justfix.nyc is a great resource for tenants. It has, it allows them to, also during the pandemic, it's an excellent resource because it allows them to start HP actions for emergency repairs, conditions in their apartment, in their building, online through this website. And now this website, it also does some other things, but that's for another day. But they have launched a new website, and that website is evictionfreeny.org. And this, I'll put it in the chat, but this enables tenants to submit hardship declaration forms online in an accessible and easy to use format, and ensures that it walks the tenant through their protections under the new law. So the law, the COVID-19 Emergency Eviction and Foreclosure Prevention Act of 2020, which was signed on December 28, 2020 by Governor Cuomo. As you all know, I've announced it already, we've talked about it here in the Housing Committee. That gives some of the best protections for nearly all eviction cases, but it's only until February 26th, 2021. It puts a stop to any evictions and foreclosures. But if you submit this hardship declaration form, if you have been affected by COVID-19 financially, or your health would be, or those of someone in your household would be affected unduly by having to be, by being evicted or foreclosed upon, you can have that extended until May 1st, the stay, the protection until May 1st, 2021. So this website helps submit that in an easy fashion and make sure it helps you to avail yourself of all the protections that you might have under the law that was recently signed. So I'm going to put that in the chat right now. That's evictionfreeny.org. So do I have any other announcements from the committee before I turn it over to any members of the public? Okay. So I don't see any announcements. So if there are no further announcements, are there any informational updates from the committee? I see a hand. Xavier, go ahead.
Hi, Jeremiah and everyone. I hope you're all doing well. One quick, it's kind of an announcement or information update combined into one. And just because we're going to be dealing with this at the end of our meeting with our budget response. But we have, the announcement was made Friday that the mayor and through the help of our advocacy, through our statement of district needs and budget requests, and through our assemblyman who's been appropriating year after year, and our councilwoman and neighboring councilman, Ben Kalos, we and the mayor has now appropriated funding for the East River Esplanade. And we've got about 3/4 of funding, and it was a huge leap forward for equity for this community and creating a green necklace around Manhattan. But just as a testament, that started way before I got on the board back in 2009. So this is something that's been at the foremost. So it does take a bit of perseverance, but don't lose hope. And to our members of the public, this is all part of the process, and they appropriate year after year after year, and then finally we get things going. So that announcement was made along with on Sunday with Representative Carolyn Maloney, who's been advocating for this as well. And so many partners came together. Jessica, Nelson, myself were all there for the presser. So just wanted to make that announcement, informational update on one. So stay positive, it'll happen. That's the point. So
That's a great announcement, Xavier. Thank you. And I could probably spend a lot of time thanking all the people who worked on that to advocate for that. There's been a lot of folks. So as Xavier said, it's been ongoing. So that's
Hey,
great news.
Xavier, can I ask a question? Where did the money come from?
it's been appropriated from all various sources, city and state predominantly. I can get the breakdown to everyone. There was a public press announcement made. Let me see if I can dig it up real quick while listening to a presentation. But yeah, so it came from both city and state. So
Thanks.
yeah.
All right, great. Any other informational updates from the public as well? This is your time before we move on into our presentations, our guests with us this evening. Okay, so we'll move on. First, I would like to welcome back New York City Housing Authority to Community Board 11's Housing Committee. I know you all were here.
I'm sorry, Jeremiah, I'm so sorry to cut you off.
Not at all.
But they're not here. I don't know if they're late,
Hmm.
but they're not on the line yet.
Well, we have, okay.
Do you want to
We
move
don't
on to the
have
next
Brian
night shift?
Cronin, but we have Metin here, right? So
Yes.
right, I'm saying that right. Yeah. Are you? Would you be okay with us just jumping ahead to you? And
Absolutely. Yeah, not a problem.
All right, wonderful. I appreciate you doing that and stepping up for us. And anyway, so welcome. And, the floor is yours here.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Mateen Sarsi. I am with the New York City Housing Authority, Office of NYCHA REIS, or Resident Economic Empowerment and Sustainability. I'm going to put my information in the chat. So you have my name, position, and email, which did not come out the way I thought it would. Let me just copy, paste, and there we go. No worries. No worries. Yeah, no, so thank you for having me. So my name is Mateen Sarse. I am with NYCHA. It is my job as one of 15 people who covers various areas around the city. I specifically cover community boards 8 and 11, also known as the East Harlem Zone. So there's 15 zones in total. I cover East Harlem, and it's my job to work with our colleagues over at NYCHA, our wonderful resident leaders within the areas we serve. I have 26 developments in total, because I range from from 70th to 135th, and from 5th Avenue to the waterfront. So I work with our resident leaders, and I also work with the organizations in the communities that I serve. And this is all for the purpose of providing asset building resources, whether a resident's looking to obtain a new job, perhaps a resident wants to further their skills through vocational training, furthering their education through obtaining a high school equivalency, formerly known as the GED, English second language, college access, and even pre-HSC. This in addition to financial counseling. So if you're looking to open a bank account, you're looking to raise your credit score, perhaps you're trying to repair your credit, start a business, saving up for a home, anything that is going to build those assets, and whatever by whatever means that a resident might have those goals. And so we do this through the zone model. And what I'll end up doing is, it's my job to become an expert in the community I live in. It just so happens that I'm native to East Harlem. I grew up on 102nd between Lex and Park. So I'm pretty familiar with the community. I've been here all my life, born in Bellevue. And so it was a really great fit for me. And pre-COVID, I spent a lot of time on the ground, going to developments, alternating with resident associations to go to different meetings on a regular basis. And we connect residents doing two different things. One is we have a referral system. So I could refer a resident to a service. A resident could go to management. For anybody who's familiar with the self-serve portal, residents could actually self-refer themselves to a service. And the other way of connecting residents are through the events that we hold. And so essentially what will happen is I myself will work with various organizations here in East Harlem. Perhaps we have citywide partners, we'll use them as well. And we'll host events. So I'm actually going to paste our website. We have a website, opportunitynycha.org. And if you go to this website, you actually get to look at not only the events that we hold on a regular basis, you get to see which partners we work with. In my case, I work with a variety of partners from Strive to NPower, Stanley Isaacs Neighborhood Center, Jobs Plus, Urban Upbound, Hot Bread Kitchen, the Small Business Solutions Center, the Financial Empowerment Center, and a variety of other organizations right here in the community. So at any given point, whenever I have a resident come to me through an event, or perhaps they would like me to refer them to a service, I'm at any given point able to have my bulk of resources and make those connections. So if you go to opportunitynycha.org, you'll actually see those events that we hold. These will be not only are these posted in advance, but for anybody who would like to receive information on the regular, every 2 weeks we have a newsletter that comes out, which you could also sign up for on our website. And every 2 weeks you'll be receiving notifications of upcoming events, things that the city is offering, CUNY scholarships or just scholarships for NYCHA residents in general. The whole point is we want to make sure that resources that are out there are being brought into one place so that we can connect our NYCHA residents as much as possible. We actually, an example of a program that we actually recently, I was really proud to recruit and help collaborate with was with LaGuardia. I'm also posting the link there. It came up on Pix 11 recently where I just recruited for a pilot program for community health workers where we had a little bit of money and we were able to partner with LaGuardia Community College. We recruited 15 NYCHA residents from East Harlem specifically. And within a 6-month period, they were trained, provided internships. So there were academic credits, there were internship hours, as well as on-the-job training. And as a result of this, the graduating students were connected to a variety of jobs. Actually, a good bunch of them actually got placed over at NYU. And it was just really fascinating. It's always fascinating to go to any event, work with any resident, and hear their stories, hear what goals they have, so that I'm able to best connect them and make sure that, at least on housing's part, that we are not the obstacle for the resident to move forward. So there is that. Most recently, I was actually working with Stanley Isaacs because they actually have a pre-HSC, HSC, and a culinary training program for 17 to 25-year-olds, in which through the city's Earn and Learn program, folks who are enrolled into their program are able to not only complete their high school equivalency, but they also get paid for it. It does not affect the resident's rent because these are on a stipend basis. And because these programs take a lengthy period of time, especially educational, vocational training programs, they take a length of time. Any sort of contribution that particular resident might be providing towards the rent would be discounted because they're in a training program. They're therefore considered to be full-time students. So those are just some of the few benefits that are part of that. I actually just had my last event with Stanley Isaacs today, where we were hosting with a few residents who were interested in their program. They also had a culinary program in which folks who got enrolled were able to not only learn culinary skills, but Stanley Isaacs also provides internship training, employment assistance at any given point. I actually really love their program because I know if I connect a resident to their program, let's say we're starting off with a pre-HSC, they have a high retention rate. So usually the same resident that goes in for a pre-HSE will eventually complete their high school equivalency, get connected to a job training program, and get a job at the same time. And if college access is an interest to the resident, they also get connected to that as well. Wonderful program. They are actually going to start February 8th. So just in case folks are interested, you have my information. You can always reach out to me at any given point. So that is what I do in a nutshell. I know that additionally folks wanted me to talk about the transformation plan, but I'll leave that up to you guys.
That's great. I really appreciate that overview. I mean, I feel like I've worked either with or against NYCHA in so many ways over the years, yet there's so many things that I don't know exist. So I appreciate you giving an overview of this. I want to open it up. Anybody on the committee have any questions specifically about some of the things that Mateen just presented to us? I know there was actually, it sounds like to me there's just a wide array of services for different age groups as well, and different sort of like, you know,
There definitely is a component I did leave out that's the most known about NYCHA Reese is the Section 3 component. That's usually the thing that most people tend to talk about, and we do so as well. At any given point, we have a bank of people who have been trained. They have attended information sessions with us, have gotten registered on our bank list, and have gotten connected. It's still a work in progress. We've been able to change the way we do things. It still needs to change, of course. But at any given point, we want to make sure that, especially moving into the future with the talks of reorganization and the transformation plan, we want to make sure that Section 3 actually gets reformed and broadened out so that we're able to bring more training programs and more connections to Section 3 jobs.
That's great. Thank you. Do I have any questions? Any other questions from the committee? I don't see any hands. Anyone from the public have any questions about those services, what Mateen has presented? Also, I just wanted to remind folks that he's dropped a lot of information in the chat. So, he has his contact information, a website, as well as a link to a news article. So feel free to take note of that. All right. So no questions? Last chance. A lot of information. So I'm sure it's going to be one of those things that will be, we could very well be emailing you,
Absolutely.
a day or two later,
Absolutely. One of the things I could definitely do as a follow-up is I'll include all the current resources that I have, our current list of partners, as well as events that are coming up within the month.
Right.
But yeah, I could definitely talk about anything Reese related to the transformation plan if anybody has questions about that.
Okay. All right, no takers. Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Mateen. And again, folks, committee members, they're never shy about reaching back out later on if we need to. So it's good to know, and it's also good for just referral purposes as well, because we get a lot of questions from constituents, and it's a whole lot of things that I didn't know existed. So I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yes. All right, Mateen. All right.
Xavier has his hand raised.
Oh wait, Xavier does have a question before we move on. All right, Xavier. Yes.
Thank you so much for being here. Much appreciated. I think one of the challenges, and I'm sure you know how this is, because I think actually the last time I saw you was last March over at Carver, when we were telling people, put on your gloves, wear your mask, hand sanitizer, all that. How are you finding, so two things, and I know one of them is probably not within your information database, but dealing with homebound seniors within NYCHA and being able to activate them, as well as those that are finding, how are you finding the accessibility portion of it and reaching the community, the NYCHA community? Because there's the homebound seniors who need help, but they want to get active. And then you also have the other side when it comes to those that want to get into a vocation of, but there's that disconnect because we can't actually have that physical interaction as we traditionally do.
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's been a few things. I mean, one of the things I've had to adapt to was the fact that, pre-COVID, I was actually on the ground a lot more. And then with COVID happening, I pretty much, I'm here at home. And so reaching out to residents has definitely been a bit of a challenge. One of the ways that I've at least myself tried to overcome that is I tend to keep a list of resident emails by development. So at any given point, I'm sharing emails from some of my partners. Just to give an example, at Wagner Houses, I also am involved with the Mayor's Action Plan over there. And so at any given point, I'll have the MAP team send me information that they would like me to share with residents at Wagner. Jobs Plus tends to cover Clinton, Johnson, and Jefferson. So I send out information on the regular. And it actually became pretty helpful, especially in the beginning, because I was receiving a lot of information back. People just like letting me know that they were happy that they were being reached out to. Actually, in terms of seniors, actually, so our office is one sister office of a general department called the Community Engagement and Partnerships Department, which is made up of resident engagement, community development, family partnerships, health initiatives, and of course ourselves. And actually, one of the things we were doing in the beginning of the pandemic was phone banking, specifically to seniors, reaching out to them. And in my experience, what I've been finding out is, number one, and I feel like it needs to be, there needs to be awards to the highest point, is residents were coming back to me, especially from Carver, Clinton, Washington, Taft, all these places who are like, our resident leaders are the ones who are bringing the resources to us. Or, it's, we have a set of questions that we tend to ask, are you receiving food? Do you need food assistance? And you really see like resident associations throughout East Harlem, at least when I was making phone calls. So many associations really stepped up when other organizations didn't, or even within our elected officials, they kind of filled the gap where perhaps we could not. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's true. They're out there. They know the residents, and it really needs to be commended that they were out there, and they're still out there. It hasn't stopped providing these resources for the seniors who I've been in touch with. One of the just like simplest things was people just thanking me just because I reached out and checked to see how they were doing, just to see how their day was, and of course, now that they had a NYCHA person on hand, they're like, well, I actually have a repair issue. Can you take down this work order number and follow up with the management? So then, there's of course the other side of that. So it was actually a really wonderful thing. I was doing that in the beginning when we were still figuring out how to transition virtually, and it was definitely very rewarding. It's still ongoing, particularly through the Family Partnerships Department, which is the social services branch of NYCHA, as well as the resident engagement. I know they've been out there making phone calls as well. An increase that we've been seeing, particularly at NYCHA Reese, has been folks who are not still looking for employment. That's always been like our top request from residents, but more so than ever, it's been home ownership workshops, which we host with neighborhood services of Brooklyn, Manhattan, and so on, as well as other organizations. But yeah, home ownership, financial counseling, and trainings. Those have been the top three services that residents have been asking for. Residents responding to me will come back and say, listen, I'm currently unemployed. While I'm waiting to get my job back, I want to get some computer skills. Can I get Microsoft Office certification? I would like to get my high school equivalency while I have time now. So there's been a huge increase in those type of services as opposed to employment, although employment is still pretty high. But it's been challenging and rewarding at the same time. I miss being in East Harlem. I still tend to go because my mother's still there, of course. And but yeah, I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it did, and thank you very much, and thanks for that shout out for our TA council presidents and the councils in general, and we have a lot of that community here tonight on our Zoom call. So thank you for acknowledging them. I know I've been on the phone with a fair few, and it takes a lot of effort to be in the call. So
Absolutely.
one follow up for that is you mentioned about health, and one of the things I mentioned, Jeremiah, I do want to discuss tonight. Hopefully, once we have Brian on, is how we are reaching our most vulnerable, our seniors who are basically stuck in their homes and can't get access to the vaccine. They can't get out to go wait in line. because of being at the at-risk category. And if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine, but are there measures being taken to actually arrange getting them access to the vaccine? Because we are still falling well below the benchmarks for inoculations.
Absolutely. It's definitely something that we're working on. I actually just received an email today from the CEP department, and it's specifically recruiting folks from the different sister offices, like our own, to man those phone calls and reach out to the seniors to make sure that they get their appointments and are getting vaccinated. We ended up partnering with the Department of Health and our sister office health initiatives, who works hand in hand with that department. And so they've been providing us training in terms of knowing what exactly is in the vaccine, because there's going to be questions about what exactly is in the vaccine. Dispelling some of the myths that might be out there that might prevent people from wanting to even move forward with that, and then being given the ability to actually make those appointments for our seniors and making sure that they do get connected. So I know that that's been happening as recently as this week, and it's going to be a much greater push moving forward for sure. And actually, a really amazing partner that I've had that's a little bit different than what I normally do is there's an organization, Harlem Health Advocacy Partners. They are a organization entirely composed of community health workers, and they service NYCHA residents. In the past, they've served 5 developments, 4 of them in the East Harlem area, one of them out of Fifth Avenue over at King's Towers. But they've served Taft, Clinton, Johnson, Lehman, as well as Kings. And they've actually now just expanded to, I believe, 8 other developments here in East Harlem. We're actually hoping that part of the pilot program in which we've been running is helping make sure that we're connecting residents to those jobs, making sure that there's training so that we're not only helping community leaders become more engaged, but also making sure that they have the tools for that outreach, because that expansion has been wonderful. And just the fact that these are NYCHA residents in these positions at the developments that they serve has really made a difference. I know a lot of the associations are familiar with HAP because they've been on the ground pre-COVID. And they've been out there. So I know they're going to be a really huge help in terms of connecting residents. And they've been one of the more amazing partnerships that I've had, because not only do they specifically connect people to health resources, but at many times they've actually been a point of referral where they see them as community leaders. They'll talk to them and say, hey, listen, like, actually, I need a job right now. And they'll say, okay, I actually know Mateen, let's get you connected. And at the same time, let's get you on SNAP. Let's get you on a health insurance if you don't have one. Amazing organization, wonderful people.
Mateen, hi, Xavier. This is Brian Honan. And just if I can, on the vaccination effort, for the last 3 weeks, we have been partnering with the state in targeting developments that are either senior developments. For instance, in Community Ward 11, Corsi Houses was the first site that we did 3 weeks ago, or developments that have a large population of seniors in them. We've been doing 1 per borough. The issue that we have is there's only a limited amount of vaccines, but as they become more available, we'll be able to do more sites. Now, the outreach we've been doing is twofold. We've been sending robocalls to all seniors who live in the host development or a nearby development. We've been doing personal outreach to residents that that use our senior centers and that we're familiar with. And we've also been flyering as well. So on top of the really great work that Mateen and his team are doing, getting residents to feel comfortable with the vaccine, we're actually offering it in the developments too. And it's a really good partnership with the state. and we appreciate the efforts there.
Very pleased to hear that. I know UPACA 6 is another one as well that has a high amount of seniors. So thank you for addressing that, Jeremiah. Thank you for your time, everyone.
Yeah, those are good questions. Again, thanks a lot, Mateen. And of course, we have Brian Honan and Andrew Kaplan here. So we're going to get into some questions on the blueprint. So you're welcome to stay if you'd like, or I don't know if questions will emerge later for you. But if not, it was great to have you once again and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to go to our next presentation from NYCHA, but we have Brian Honan, Vice President of the Office of Intergovernmental Relations, and Andrew Kaplan, Deputy Chief of Staff here. And we thank you very much, first off, for coming back, you know, now that there's specific questions after folks had a chance to sort of generally review and digest a little bit the blueprint for change. So welcome, and again, thank you. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, and then we can open it up to some questions later.
Great, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And we got your questions in advance, so we'll be happy to answer them. And just quickly on the blueprint. So before we arrived, we heard you talking to Mateen about the transformation plan. And I also, I just want to clear up. So the blueprint is part of the transformation plan, but the transformation plan is much greater than just the blueprint. The transformation plan is a requirement of the agreement that was reached between NYCHA, HUD, the Southern District of New York, and the City of New York to change the way we manage our properties, right? So the agreement called for NYCHA to come up with a bottom to top approach in the way buildings are managed. That plan is to be submitted to the monitor. The federal monitor can either accept it or say, I like some of these things, I don't like these things, go back to the drawing board. Or he can say, you know what, none of this works, and I'm going to come up with my own plan, which NYCHA could either accept or go to HUD to be a referee on this, and HUD would then come up with some proposal jointly. So I think that's important to understand. Some of the other things that the transformation plan deals with is how are properties going to be managed moving forward? How are work orders going to be addressed? Where is staff going to be? Do we really need so much staff in 250 Broadway and 90 Church? Should a lot of those folks be in the field? The answer that we're coming up with is yes, more people should be in the field. We don't really need as many people in the central office. At NYCHA, we all know that we have issues. We have serious issues. Our issues, we can point to funding all day long, and it's true, and there is no arguing that we have seen disinvestment on the federal, state, and city level for more than a generation. But if we just look at that and we don't deal with the management issues, we're also going to have problems as well. So we need to attack it in two ways. And that's what the blueprint does, and that's what the transformation plan does. So quickly on the blueprint, what the blueprint looks to do is to go after where the funding is. And the funding, unfortunately, right now, and for many, many years, has not been with the Section 9 program. Cities, no matter what the size, large, medium size, or smaller size, have really put effort towards finding additional ways to bring in funding to gain repairs in public housing. And whether they do that through the rental demonstration program, or through demolition, or through public-private partnerships of other sizes, all those models have been tried. Some of them have been more successful than others. But in New York, we have largely held on to the public housing model And since 2015 or so, we have done about 10,000 units of what is known locally as PACT, what is known as nationally as RAD. What the blueprint looks to do is take the ideas under RAD that really work well in bringing about repairs and bringing them about quickly, but what it does leave out is the private entity. The blueprint will create a totally public agency that has a public board, a public workforce, and is funded largely with public dollars. It would transfer from Section 9 to Section 8, but it's not just regular Section 8 vouchers. It is vouchers known as tenant protection vouchers. And these are vouchers that HUD offers to distressed housing authorities that are worth a lot more money. They are worth about $650 per unit per month. And if you add up 110,000 units, that starts to accumulate pretty fast, and you have a lot of money that you can now invest into the buildings. On top of that, we would have the ability to use that funding to leverage additional funds to get at all of the issues that nature faces, not just the boiler, the roof, the elevators, but we'd be able to get inside people's apartments to do the repairs that they've been waiting for so long. And on top of that, we would also have procurement relief. And so currently, one of nature's problems is that we have to go to the lowest responsible bidder, which often means that we see vendors that are not really up to par, do work that is not very, that none of us would feel good about. And we're stuck with that. And I know that gets at one of the questions that you're asking here. And that's why we kept that in mind as well. To achieve this, we would need state legislation. And within the state legislation, there is the ability to create this trust, to protect all of the same tenants' rights, to make sure that nobody pays more than 30% of their income towards rent, and to make sure and to ensure that this is a public entity with a public board that is made up of 9 members, 4 residents, 1 member from the labor force, and 4 others that are appointed by both NYCHA and the mayor of the city of New York. So I think that's my 5-minute version of what is normally a 35-minute presentation, but if I left anything out, I'll be glad to get to it. But for now, I think we'll just go down and answer your questions. So,
Yeah, that sounds good.
Andrew, do you want to take question number 1?
Yeah, great. And I'm happy to read out the question just for everyone, if that works for you.
Yeah, just in case, because I think there may be members of the public who don't have a copy. So yeah.
That sounds great.
Yeah,
no problem. And thanks again for having me tonight. I really appreciate the chance to speak with you all again. So the first question was, how will NYCHA's Blueprint for Change plan strengthen and maintain the current guidelines under Section 3, which requires that employment and other economic opportunities generated by federal assistance to public housing authorities be directed, whenever possible, to public housing residents and other low and very low income residents? And so that's a really good question. The first thing that I think is important to emphasize is both because this is still federal assistance, right? So because, as Brian mentioned, the resources that we would be using to do the renovations are federal subsidies, the Section 3 requirements map on. And in addition, because we would have to be going through state legislation, we've actually specifically called out in the state legislation that Section 3 requirements will all have to apply to any of the work that's being done. And so that, as a blanket requirement, makes sure that this is maintained in multiple levels of the law. And what that ends up playing out in terms of reality is on the construction side, there's, we hope, going to be somewhere between $18 billion to $25 billion worth of work that would be done. So that's construction work that would require Section 3 obligations. And that comes in many different forms, both in terms of, you know, general contractors or construction management firms, or so, you know, so on down the line, you know, skilled trades, that type of thing. Much of which is worked out through our project labor agreements on those projects, which calls out in many instances specific requirements for those economic opportunities. One thing that I would just add is the chair has been, or he, for those of you who may have been on one of his town halls or heard a presentation or been in a small group discussion with him, he is very focused on this piece, and he has been working with a lot of the folks involved internally at NYCHA and also, you know, residents and other stakeholders to try and come up with what are the ways that we can improve our compliance with Section 3, including the folks over in Reese. Great to see you on, Mateen. So, you know, there's a big effort and push for us to improve the way that we do this work, even if the requirements are still there, right? Oftentimes we hear, you know, there isn't compliance there, the jobs don't actually end up going where they should, and we want to make sure that we're ironing that out and creating oversight in a really robust way as we're doing this.
Can I also add, Andrew, to what the trust does too within the proposed legislation is for the first time creates an MWBE preference for firms who want to do business with NYCHA. And studies have shown that MWBE firms do a much better job in hiring locally and also comply with Section 3. Believe it or not, NYCHA does not have an MWBE preference currently, and we're really excited about the idea of putting one in place now. We've had many discussions with the minority contractors associations, and they're excited about partnering with us on this as well, and really look forward to making sure that this will not only be good for the residents who live in public housing, but the surrounding communities as well.
That's great. Appreciate that. I think what we could do is just continue. I see Beverly, your hand is up, but I'm just gonna let Andrew go through the list of questions that we already emailed them, because it consists of a lot of questions we've gotten from members of the public as well as committee members. So if there's still additional questions at the end, I'll circle back. All right, so thanks. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
Sure, yeah, that sounds good. So the second one was currently NYCHA contract specific vendors for repairs and maintenance. The repairs are often inadequate. Under the plan, how will NYCHA ensure that repairs done by either internal staff or outside vendors will be done to the highest standards of quality and completeness? And Brian mentioned this a little bit in his introduction, but I think there's two things to emphasize here. The first is that what the trust would allow NYCHA to do is do a different type of procurement where we wouldn't have to go necessarily to the lowest responsive bidder, but would be able to choose the response with the best value. And that best value could include things like the quality of the work that was done in the past and other things that make sure that any contractors that we're working with are providing the best quality services. Because obviously, if we are going to be doing this, we want to make sure that the work lasts for decades and is not just a cosmetic repair. The second thing to emphasize is that as part of the HUD agreement, we have actually mandated by law, but it's been something that we've taken on internally, 3 new departments that were created: the compliance department, the environmental health and safety department, and the quality assurance department. And all of those departments are out checking on the work that's being done, in many instances being out directly at the property, sometimes just very intensive. It varies depending on the team, but sometimes being at one property for a significant amount of time to just make sure that work is being done as it is supposed to be done in compliance with the law and regulations and according to any contracts. And that goes for both in-house staff and any vendors who we are working with. And that's something that we've seen show some positive results so far. We can always do better, of course, and it's the intention is to make sure that grows and continues throughout this process. The third piece, and also maybe I'll just go through, and then if we want to go in more detail on any of them, we can do that. The third question was, the Blueprint for Change plan does mention the possibility of long-term displacement for residents during renovations. What is NYCHA's plan to provide households that happen to be so displaced while renovations are being done? Will also affected households be guaranteed to return their units upon completion of the renovations? So in the legislation itself, if Brian hasn't already provided a copy of the draft that was introduced last year, we'd be more than happy to send that around as well. The right to return is guaranteed in that legislation. So everyone would be guaranteed the right to return, even if there were some sort of temporary need to leave your unit while construction was done. That all being said, I think one thing that we're trying to think about as we go through the design process, and I think to just take a step back, if this were to happen at any development, there would be a very long engagement process where we would be specifically focusing on the development in question, working with the community engagement and partnerships team to make sure that all of the specifics of development are addressed, whether it's physical needs or any sort of special accommodations that need to be dealt with. And as part of that, we would be looking to minimize the relocation. We know that it is a burden, and we know that it is a hassle, and in many instances even more than that. And so we would want to make sure that that time out of the unit is as small as possible. If it does have to happen, it would be on a case-by-case basis. Say for doing lead abatement in a unit, it might be, a day or two. Kitchens and baths might be, let's say, a week. But no matter what, if there were any sort of temporary need to be out of the unit, NYCHA would pay for all of the costs, any expenses associated with it, and would look to try and either do some sort of checkerboarding with a hospitality unit on site or nearby, say hotels, something that is close in the community to make sure that folks are still, in and around the community. So that's the idea behind that. But just want to emphasize, it would really be a property by property discussion where everyone would need to be comfortable with what's happening. Most importantly, of course, the residents. For the next question, the plan will focus on the 110,000 NYCHA units in need of repair. How will that focus impact the remaining units under the rental assistance demonstration? I think the thing to just emphasize here is that the RAD program is really, and Brian mentioned this a little bit at the start, the RAD program is really the only tool the federal government has offered over the last decade or so for renovating apartments. And so the plan is to move forward simultaneously, because many of the sites need repairs right now. On the 62,000 units, as Brian mentioned, there have been about 9,000 units that have already converted. So the two would go side by side. And what that would mean is that for the first time, there would be a plan for every development. There would be the ability to address the capital needs at every development across the portfolio. The fifth question is, please provide the total current number of units impacted by RAD that are currently facing eviction. How many of these units are located in Manhattan Community District 11? under what circumstances is NYCHA pursuing evictions of RAD impacted units? Will those evictions continue under the proposed blueprint plan? And I think, Brian, I'll turn it to you for that one. Brian, you're on mute.
Yep.
Oh.
Okay. Sure. So, so it's not. So I just want to be clear. So NYCHA is involved in the eviction process at these developments. In the managing agent needs to come to NYCHA to justify whether there is an issue or not, and that's a good thing too, because we want to make sure that we essentially serve as the check to make sure that the managing agents aren't, just evicting or harassing tenants for no reason, and if actions have to be taken, that we we know about it, and we look it over and we say, okay, we have no choice here, but we need to they need to move forward. In this community board, you have the building on 111th Street that has gone through PAC and RAD, and right now there are no tenancy actions in that building. But it is, it's early in the process, but we have not seen any reported tenancy actions in that building. In 2020, because housing court has been closed and evictions have been paused citywide, this is not the best year to look at, but I can tell you that citywide throughout the portfolio, there have been no evictions, but there have been 46 cases that have come before the managing agents. 33 of those are for non-payment, and 13 are holdover cases, and these meaning that the tenant in place was not on the lease. Now, the place where this was a big issue, there was a story a few years ago about Ocean Bay in Rockaway, where it was reported that there were 80 cases where people were evicted, and that was the highest number when compared to the rest of our portfolio. And I will tell you that tenants in RAD PAC properties, just like in NYCHA properties, do have the ability to cure their issues, and also do have the right to, before it goes to housing court, to settle the matter with the managing agent. So I just want to clear up the issue at Ocean Bay, and the numbers have gotten a lot more reasonable as time went on. So in 2017, the first year that the managing agent took over at Ocean Bay, we saw 32 cases come before them, and 20 of them, actual 20 evictions, right? 14 of those cases were holdovers. That means the tenant in place did not have a lease. And in many cases, they were not even tied to the family who was on the lease originally. So this was not a legal tenant, and sometimes we couldn't trace them at all to the legal tenant we had on record. We had 7 people who just decided that they were not going to sign a new lease and moved on. In order to turn the apartment over, we needed to go through the whole process and turn that apartment over. And there was one apartment there that was abandoned, and once again, we had to go through the process. We did have 6 units in 2017 that were for non-payment, and even though they were given the opportunity to pay what was owed. It did not work out, and they did not come to an agreement. In 2018, we saw 26 cases. 15 were only 15 were completed. 8 for holdovers, 7 for non-payment. In 2019, 15, but in 2020, we saw less. So Ocean Bay has been way higher than the other developments. We're not seeing this same type of, we're not seeing these numbers at Baychester and Murphy or in other developments that have converted. But I also will note too that we asked legal aid to look over all these cases, and although legal aid will say they never met an eviction that they approve of, they also didn't think that anything was done here that was improper, or there would be any way that there was any way they could even defend the residents in these cases as well. So I hope that answers the question.
Thanks, Brian. And then just the last question. Yeah, so the last question on the list was number 6. A new federal administration will be appointed in 2021. Will NYCHA continue to pursue funding through the Blueprint for Change plan, or will new funding requests be directed to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD? I can start, and then Brian, maybe if you want to chime in on this as well. I mean, I think the first thing to emphasize is that we are constantly asking HUD for more capital funding, regardless of the administration, whether it's Trump or Obama or now Biden. We have a set of folks on actually Brian's team who work very closely with our federal partners and consistently ask for more traditional Section 9 capital funding and operating funding each and every year. And we actually organized recently a letter that requested many resources, including those resources that got sign-ons from 777 public housing authorities across the country to push for more funding, something that we hope to continue and re-up for the new administration. So this is always a constant for us. At the same time, though, just given the history of federal funding for Section 9, even when there has been unified Democratic control, we just simply haven't seen the funding that we need to fully invest into the portfolio. And I really hope that that is not the case this time around. I think we all would really be hoping to see significant investment in public housing as part of a COVID package or part of an infrastructure package. But at the same time, we need to make sure that we are continuing the conversation with the Blueprint, because that does provide us with an avenue to repair the units through an entirely public process using existing federal rules and regulations and appropriations. At the same time, the Public Housing Preservation Trust can also be flexible and use these other resources, right? It could be a combination. Let's say we get some capital funding and operating funding from the new administration, which I think is certainly very possible. The trust could use that money more efficiently than NYCHA can. Something that we hear all the time is that NYCHA can't use its money even when it gets it, and we want to correct for that. And so we think that there's an opportunity for the two to work hand in hand. Brian, does that cover it, or?
Yeah, I think it does, but I'd also like to add, so this is really an exciting time, not only for NYCHA, but for the country as a whole, and we look forward to working with the majority in both houses, and we've already been having conversations with HUD, and we were having conversations with the transition team, and the new secretary this is all very exciting. But what's really important to keep in mind is that even if we got a substantial amount of capital dollars, whether it's through the Velasquez bill or the Waters bill or a new appropriation, What's key here to keep in mind is all of those would be a one shot. So it would be a tremendous amount of money that goes into NYCHA at one time. And it is only capital money that's being discussed right now. The trust provides both capital and operating dollars. And the difference being capital is for big infrastructure spending. Operating dollars is to make sure that you have the staff in place to make sure that the maintenance is being up, the upkeep. The trust also provides an ongoing source of funding. We don't want to be in a place where in 20 years we're coming back with a new plan and a new idea because we've now gone 20 years without new investment, and it's time once again to find a new financing mechanism for these properties. With that said, I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. I think a lot of these ideas, whether it's the Velasquez bill, the Waters bill, or the Green New Deal for public housing, we speak to our partners in Washington all the time. I'm sure there's a way that we can work all these things into the trust.
Excellent. So perfect. So thanks a lot for that. I think there's just one last question there. And then before we open up to anything that may have been sparked that wasn't already answered.
I'm sorry, could you ask the question? Because I don't think
yeah, there's one. This is what it says. Yeah, no problem. It says, what will happen with tenants who do not meet the income guidelines for Section 8? Will those tenants be removed?
Oh, okay.
So yeah, and Brian, I can speak to this if you want to add. So any existing resident right now will not, there's no rescreening, no displacement. So as a result of this, even if you don't meet the requirements for whatever reason, if you're an existing resident, there would not be any displacement of any sort. You would be able to stay, including the income guidelines. So just to be very clear about that.
Thank you.
And also to be clear, the new tenants coming in would come in off the NYCHA Section 8 and public housing waiting list. So there is no world in which this would not be at the same affordability rates, and in many cases even lower than we currently have. And so there's no world in which, we often get asked, well, on vacancy, are we going to see market rate tenants come into these apartments? And the answer is absolutely not. There is no way that could happen, either from the deed restrictions put in place, but also from what we're putting in place to make sure that the people who've been waiting a very long time on a waiting list get served through the trust.
Thank you. All right, so that's all the questions that we have. I really appreciate it. I do think it clears up a lot of questions that folks had, but I'm sure there's some other things that maybe were sparked in people's minds as they were listening today, or they think that's still not answered. So I know that there were some hands from the public, which I will turn to in just a moment. But first, I just want to see quickly if any of my committee members have any questions for Brian or Andrew right now. Candy, do you have a question? Oh yeah, Candy, there we go. Go ahead. It looks like your microphone's unmuted, but I'm not hearing you. Okay, well, we'll try. I don't know if maybe you can try to sort that out, Candy, but we'll see if anyone else has any questions, or if you can type it, then we can do it that way. All right, so I don't see any other committee member hands, so I'm gonna move to the public. First, I'm just gonna circle back, see if Beverly, if you still have a question. If so, you can go ahead. And then I see the other hand, so.
Hello?
We hear you.
Okay. My question is that, Brian, the trust is built on 9 members, and 4 of them, you mentioned 4 of them are tenants and 1 of them was somewhere else. Can you explain to us where the other 9
Sure.
board members will consist of?
Yep. So 4 would be residents, and how they get chosen is something that we're open to. And the original draft said that the NYCHA would pick 2 and the mayor would pick the other 2. Many residents say, well, why can't residents have a say in how the residents are chosen? If they're going to be our representatives, we should pick them. And we think that's a good idea, and we would like to. We're certainly open to ideas on how those residents get chosen.
Okay, well, I had the last conversation that we had with the chair. He said 2 of the board members would be NYCHA residents, which I feel, and 9. If there's 9 board members, I believe that if NYCHA really cared about the residents and what we believe in, and they should have had more than 4 tenants, because we will never be the majority of what will be going on in these developments.
So
I
yep,
just-
no, I definitely hear that, Beverly. And there would be nothing to prevent actually all 9 members from being residents, right? The mayor and NYCHA could decide that all of the members, are residents. But 4 have to be residents. There is no getting around the fact that they have to be residents. The other member would be somebody who is a worker for NYCHA who is from one of the represented unions. So whether that is Teamsters or DC 37 or CWA, those are like the big unions that represent NYCHA workers. Then there are 4 other members, and again, these members could be tenants, but there are 2 that are specifically spelled out. One is the current chair of NYCHA, or the current CEO of NYCHA, excuse me, and the other is the deputy mayor who's in charge of housing. But then there could be, depending on who is the mayor and the appointments made by NYCHA, there could be a majority of tenants. So there's nothing that would prevent that.
And I just have a concern that this seems like a conflict of interest, because NYCHA, this chair, this board trust will be hiring NYCHA for daily operation. So it just seems like it's a conflict of interest to have NYCHA staff on this chair. And if you are hiring the operation, if you're going to be the hiring mechanism of this of the board, like why would this trust hire NYCHA, but then you have NYCHA residents on the executive board? It just seemed like it would be a conflict of interest. So that's my biggest concern, that why is NYCHA double dipping?
Right. And Andrew, maybe you can add a little bit to this. So NYCHA's current board also has 3 residents as well. Why we went to the model of a public workforce here was because there are folks who really love the rental assistance demonstration program, and then there are other people who say, no how, no way, that is not coming to my development, and I don't want it, and I don't feel comfortable with it. And I understand both arguments. but we hear people say the idea of bringing in a private manager, because that was the other option, right? Either we contract with NYCHA, with the public workforce, or we have a private manager who comes in. Makes me feel very uncomfortable, especially if I live in a gentrifying neighborhood, where, yes, maybe I have my issues with NYCHA's workforce. At least I know I do have some, because they're a public workforce, I have some say and power over them. Whereas with a private workforce, you definitely lose a little bit of leverage there. And Andrew, I don't know if you want to talk about, what could possibly be a conflict, but
Yeah,
I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I think in terms of the board and sort of the legal structures, what we were attempting to do is create public entity that is a partner with NYCHA. And just because it is a separate legal entity doesn't mean that it's not related. Kind of like the Department of Education and the School Construction Authority, where the Department of Education, which is, of course, a public agency, has its own employees who do, a whole set of operations work, teaching, et cetera. And then the School Construction Authority, which also is a public agency, and in many instances is related to the Department of Education, has its own focus just on the construction. And so while they're two technically distinct entities, they overlap and are related in many ways. And in a lot of ways, that's kind of the same structure that we're looking at for NYCHA and the trust, where they are different but overlap in many ways and are both working towards that common goal of preserving and maintaining the apartments.
And I have one last question. I have submitted to the community board reference to the tenant protection vouchers. If you look on the site, the urban housing and urban development, it states that that vouchers are only to be used for housing that are going to be demolished or what was that? Not mandatory. It's demolished. It has specifics. I forgot what it says, but it just seems like NYCHA will be obtaining these vouchers under false pretense because they're not demolishing our apartment.
Yeah, go ahead, Andrew. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I can start, and then maybe Brian, you can jump in. So there's several different ways or reasons that HUD can give tenant protection vouchers. One of them is demolition, and that's not what we're doing here. Just to be very clear, there's no demolition in this. But another one is disposition, and that might be what you were thinking of. And disposition is can mean a couple different things, but one of the things that it means is when you have a long-term lease to another entity, like NYCHA is going to do or thinking about doing with the trust. And so under HUD's eyes, it wouldn't be under false pretenses. It would be according to the rules that they have stipulated, because NYCHA would be doing this disposition, this long-term ground lease to the trust, another public entity. The trust would then do the construction work and contract back to NYCHA for the maintenance of the buildings. And so in the eyes of HUD and the federal government, it meets all of the rules and regulations, which means we can get those TPVs, those tenant protection vouchers that bring in more money, and there's no demolition. And again, you have that public to public workforce still remaining and involved. Does that help clear it up a little bit?
It just seems like it's still under false pretense to me. And a lot of us resident leaders are opposed to this transformation with the blueprints for change. That's all I have to say.
Sure, and Beverly too, believe me, HUD is not gonna just give these out because we, we say so. We're gonna have to prove to them that we meet the standard here. And the standard here is called obsolescence. And basically what it does is we say that what it does is it says that this housing is, for lack of a better word, it's distressed. It would need a tremendous amount of money in order to get it to a state of good repair. And I know many of you have worked with many of you, over many years, and we have developments that are facing a multitude of problems all at the same time, whether it's boilers that are 20 years past their lifespan, elevators that are unpredictable, roofs that leak, and mold that will never be fixed until we replace the plumbing. When presented with issues like that, HUD would have no other choice other than to give us the vouchers that we need, that we could invest in the properties under those circumstances. But demolition would not be part of that plan.
Well, that's because NYCHA, we have not done preventive maintenance to secure our property. So what makes you think that NYCHA is going to do a better job with more money? So that's just my point. That's just,
Yeah, no,
I don't understand.
I hear that, and I think I acknowledged that too in the beginning when I said that NYCHA's problems are twofold, right? It is if it was just a funding problem, then making sure that we got a lot of capital dollars would get us out of this issue. But we have both a funding and a management problem at NYCHA that needs to be cured. And that is also why HUD wants to make sure that we come up with a transformation plan as well that changes the way we do management to a way that makes sense, a way that's more modern, that's a way that's more receptive to tenants' needs.
You can't transform something that has been with the same old people. I'm going to allow someone else to speak, but I just want CB11 know that all the resident leaders, a lot of us are opposed to this transformation.
Thanks, Beverly. I appreciate that. Sincerely appreciate it, because that's the point, is we're here to listen to your concerns. And also that's why, we're happy that we have guests from NYCHA who are able to come here and directly answer your questions, right? So there's nothing to hide behind. They're here in front of you and they're answering your questions. So, but I do appreciate Beverly. And of course, that you can continue to be in touch with me to talk to me also specifically about the people, in your network and what their thoughts are currently on the blueprint for change, right? All the different developments. I know you're connected, so with a lot of folks here. So we'll talk, okay? But
Thank
I
you.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yes. I'm going to go next, and anybody, please feel free to always correct me if I ever mispronounce your name. So, but please go ahead. First, we're going to go to Marguerite Singleton, and then I see you, Claudia Perez. I'll go to you afterwards. So Marguerite Singleton, please go on ahead.
Marguerite, you're unmuted on this end, so you can go ahead and unmute yourself on your end. Okay, you got it.
Okay, so it seems like we're still having problems hearing you, Marguerite. It looks like it's unmuted on your end, but I'm not hearing anything. So, okay, so we're gonna go on to Claudia Perez. Marguerite, of course, we'll circle back to you right afterward and give you a chance to see if your microphone's fixed. All right, Claudia.
Hello.
Yes, we hear you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Claudia Perez. I'm Washington houses. Okay, what I want to say is, according to the Section 3, and they mention that the vendors that they choose are the worst of the worst. The only reason that they are the worst of the worst is because of the continuous behavior that NYCHA does and the neglect that it does. Because if you were to check on the work that the vendors were doing and you reported that, they can no longer apply for the bid, and therefore we would have had the maintenance done. So I feel that when you're saying that you're going to be transferring from Section 9 over to the Section 8 platform, I feel that you should be pushing Section 8Y, which is home ownership, which Mateen, who works in the community, has said that most of our residents in NYCHA are inquiring about this. I want to know, why aren't we pushing Section 8Y? Why is it strictly Section 8, and the vouchers are specifically towards the the apartment, and we're not giving any other option other than the blueprint? Now, if you want to say transformable changes, right? How are we supposed to, as residents, supposed to support this when continuously we have NYCHA employees who have constantly had a culture of disrespect to the resident? You understand? Nobody has been held accountable. So again, we're transferring over to another plan. Where is the accountability? That's what we're asking for, the accountability. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Ms. Perez. So why Section 8 and why not stay with Section 9? And I think the answer is very pragmatic, is because that's where the money is, right? Unfortunately, Section 9, quite some time ago, was viewed as a program that largely served many cities more than rural, suburban areas, mostly cities that were represented by Democrats. And it's a very partisan issue. Section 8 has, serves people in cities and suburban areas and rural areas. It has more of a constituency, and it is better funded. That's just, if the money was with Section 9, we would be putting all of our efforts there as well. It is I like Section 8 better than Section 9. It is, I like where the money is.
Doesn't
Doesn't
excuse me, sorry, but doesn't Section 8 carries less subsidy than Section 9? And
no, historically,
why I'm asking is because we now have people who are over in the RAD conversions in Queens who their subsidy has been broken down to $1. That's how much subsidy they're receiving. Can you explain why that is happening?
no, I don't know that particular issue, but no, it is actually Section 8 over the years has been better funded, both on the project-based side and on the tenant-based side as well. And with these tenant protection vouchers, they're even worth more than your regular voucher. So the funding, here is with Section 8, and it has been historically, and that's why we're going after that funding. Now, in terms of the management question, you're 100% right. There has been for too long an issue with NYCHA's management. In fact, it got so bad that in 2019, the Southern District of New York came down on NYCHA along with HUD, and appointed a federal monitor and did everything but put NYCHA into receivership to make sure that NYCHA changes the way we do business, and to make sure that people are held accountable. It is still new, but I would say after about a year with the monitor, we are seeing changes. We're seeing changes that will not only change performance, but also change culture within NYCHA. And it's not only specific to this monitor. Under this agreement is a 20-year agreement. And so we will see monitors moving forward who have tremendous power under the agreement in order to put in place measures to hold NYCHA's feet to the fire. Andrew, if there's anything I was missing, please feel free to weigh in.
No, I think that covered it, Brian.
Thank you very much. I want to circle back to Marguerite. I want to give you another chance. Oh, you put your question in the chat. I must have missed it. Oh, I see that. Okay. Is this the one, Marguerite, where you said, is it that management are not making the arrangements with contractors for the repairs? Is that the question that you're referring to? Okay.
Jeremiah, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm gonna try to give Marguerite the dial-in code again. She's having difficulty. She wants to call in.
Oh, the original question just before that. Okay.
You can go ahead and move on. I'll work with her on the side.
Oh, okay. I see it here. So I'll ask it for her, for you all. Marguerite asked, will Wagner House's health, security, and repair issues get addressed in 2021 under the Blueprint for Change? Issues regarding mold, boiler, water filter replacement, asbestos, building access for tenants via keys/swabs, and elevator ventilation, since so many are in close proximity during this pandemic.
So we certainly can't promise it for 2021, but but moving forward, the answer is yes. So where we're going to focus our energy and our dollars first is to health and safety issues. So mold is the biggest price tag issue that we have throughout NYCHA. And in order to address it, we are going to have to replace all the pipes throughout our developments to address this issue once and for all. It cannot just be you replace 6 feet of pipe here, you replace 4 feet of pipe here, you plaster over an area, you paint over an area. None of those things work. We have plumbing in many developments, and in East Harlem has some of our oldest developments that is 50, 60 years old and has been used over the years, many years, in many ways. So our objective is to make sure that we cover mold, elevators, heat, and lead immediately. Those are the issues we want to make sure that we get down to. And then we will have additional funding to make sure that we tackle your apartment issues. And if we have more money, we can get even into the community centers and the common areas. But the most important stuff, the things to make sure that we focus on is the residential buildings.
All right, thank you very much for your answer. I know Marguerite's really, I think, just trying to convey, since her microphone's not working, the urgency of the situation. She's talking about asbestos in the building being disturbed, which can be seen from the lobby, attached nursery. So there's a multitude of problems, and I'm sure if she could speak right now, she would be very urgent and pressing with those. So.
No, yeah, and I agree. I don't think it's only Wagner. I think it's developments throughout the city. I think the issue is right now at NYCHA, there is an urgency. And we have about 400,000 folks who live in these properties who have not been served the way they should be. And there's an urgency to do something now, because issues that should be very simple to most landlords, like providing heat, like providing elevator service, like making sure that a building is safe and secure, are not so simple for us at all. in fact, that they're incredible challenges for us, and they should be something that people, especially people who do what they're supposed to do, they follow the rules, they pay the rent, they deserve these services.
Thank you. Do we have, I didn't see any other hands, so feel free to put them back up if I missed you, because it looks to me that that's everybody who had questions for Brian and Andrew. So also I want to let you know, Marguerite, as well, and others that, you know, we repeatedly, and I know Brian and Andrew have heard it too, you know, in interacting with residents. There's, you know, the urgency of the situation, the pressing nature of these problems, the health issues, the safety issues. You know, it is, you know, in housing court, I still have judges who still will yell at the NYCHA attorneys because they say, I don't care. They say about, you can give all your excuses about your capital needs, the funding, the planning, the managers, but there is a safety issue with the building door lock being broken, period. That is a huge issue, and that has to be fixed in accordance with the law. So, you know, but of course we do know that it's absolutely true. There's been over a generation of divestment. Oh, Marguerite, I'm referring to housing court, just landlord tenant court in New York City. You know, so there is actual divestment. And so these, you know, I do appreciate, again, Brian and Andrew coming in and talking. There's a lot of, you know, confusion. There's multiple layered programs. There's this program, there's that program. So I know a lot of it's confusing, a lot of it, and people are having different experiences as being rolled out piecemeal. There's a lot of anticipation, anxiety, and general stress that's been going on, you know, over time because of the way that people have had to live, right? The studies are now out there in force, right? We know what kind of stressors there are when people have to live with certain conditions in their house and how it affects mental health and family dynamics and employment, and on we can go. So, last thing I wanted to say is, last thing I wanted to clarify, because something, Andrew, that you said, if I believe I heard it correctly, that between RAD and Blueprint for Change, between those two programs, that the entire NYCHA portfolio citywide should be covered. Is that, excuse me?
That's,
yeah.
That, I mean, that would assume,
Force capital needs,
right, moving,
capable of being met. Right.
That's right, yeah. The idea is to put forth ideas that if they were moved forward, they could cover the entire portfolio, the 110,000, give or take a few, for the Blueprint and the trust, and then about 60,000 for RAD backed.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. All right, so I don't see any other hands that have gone up in the last few minutes. So I thank you both so much for your time. We really appreciate it. And I want everyone to know here that this is just an ongoing conversation, right? They've already come back. We had them in October, now they're back. And then, you know, we're continuing to engage with the community. This is by no means a one-off conversation and we move on. So, you know, we'll continue to keep the ball rolling. You can feel free to contact community board with questions that you have or concerns about these specific things.
And thank you too. I'd like to say thank you to this board. I always appreciate Community Board 11 and the interest that they have in public housing. As you said, we'll come back anytime. Also too, I heard some people say, you know, can I see that in writing too? So if the board would like, if you'd like to send us follow-up for certain areas, we could point out exactly in the legislation that is covered. Because let's face it, I hope that folks trust me individually as a person, but the organization I work for, let's face it, over the years, doesn't have that same level of trust. So I don't blame you for wanting to see things in writing. We'll be happy to provide that. Also to the resident leaders who are on here, I always appreciate, you know, talking to you and know, you know, whether we agree or disagree on an issue, I always want to partner with you. I always want to make sure that we work together because I think our goals are the same.
All right, thanks again. That is what we're dialoguing for, right? That's absolutely what we are. The objective is there to improve, drastically improve public housing and get people the conditions they deserve. So thanks again, and we'll be in touch. All right. So we'll go on to the next agenda item. And fortunately, it says update on eviction moratorium in New York City Housing Court. The good news is that is an extremely brief bullet point because I have it just as a standing agenda item because of the nature of the pandemic and what it means to be evicted, particularly during this time or foreclosed on. So it's a standing agenda item for the committee, but there is no update. Right now, the law is what it is, what I referenced earlier, the December 28th, 2020 law. Oh, and thank you, Brian. Brian Honan has placed contact information and Andrew Kaplan as well in the chat. So I wanted to note that. Thanks again very much for coming. So yeah, so there's no update as far as the moratorium. The moratorium ends on February 26th, 2021 for almost all eviction and foreclosure cases. Remember, I told you there's a nuisance exception, and of course, tenants can try to get emergency repairs, or if they're illegally locked out, they can still accede to courts. That is still the same. Once again, if you are financially affected during the COVID-19 pandemic and or you or someone in your household, it would present a serious health risk to be evicted or foreclosed upon during the pandemic, then you can submit a hardship declaration, which is found online, which I had put the site earlier in the chat. I will do so again now since I'm talking about it, which would allow you to extend your protection from evictions and foreclosures through May 1st, 2021. All right. So that's it in a nutshell. That's the update. It's basically the same thing, but if there are any questions, of course, I can answer them. Are there any questions? I'll pause briefly to see if any hands go up, whether it's from the committee or the public. Anyone can raise their hand. Okay, so the next agenda item is the mayor's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022. Marlene sent it to the committee, the materials, so you all should have received it and we should be looking at it because now the process begins. Of course, I'm never the best at explaining this, so I will probably get the assist from you about explaining the budget process right now to the committee, but I know that the community board, there's only 30 days to get in responses to the mayor's preliminary budget, the comments. So anything pertinent to this committee, we would have to make sure that we review right away, see how we're affected with the preliminary budget, and also to see how some of our longstanding asks, whether they've been met or what the answers are to them, or whether they're still relevant, or whether priorities may have shifted given the nature of things now. So I don't know if anyone has any comments or questions about that. Xavier, go right ahead.
Hey, sorry about that. Thank you, everyone. A couple of things. I don't know if everyone had a moment to look at what Marlene sent. And Marlene, very much appreciated. Those members of the public, we did have our public session where we could receive and notate testimony. You have until, I think it's February 12th. Correct me if I'm wrong, either Jeremiah or Marlene. I think it's February 12th is the last day we can accumulate testimony from that. And one of those items in the request, I'm trying to multitask here. One of them, it says they're in funding, and it kind of implies that it's been approved, but they're in the hiring process. I think that's something we should definitely keep tabs on. There's another issue, and I don't know if Brian has completely logged off. It looks like he's gone, but it would have been, we can follow up with him, is the study for, hold on, I'm trying to pull this up on the laptop. Where it said it needed more study with getting laptops or some kind of devices in the vans for recertification and whatnot. I think now during a time of COVID, there's not much study that's needed. It's fairly apparent that we would be putting people at risk who definitely need assistance if they're homebound, or it's recommended that they stay at home when it comes to recertifying and access. Some way to facilitate. So I don't know how we can respond to that. I can think on that a bit, but Some of the other items, the majority of them on our list were to fund within existing resources. So thank you, Marlene. Let's see here. Yeah, they were trying to accommodate with the existing resources, which is, as we know, the blanket explanation of, we'll see what the budget we're allocated and we'll try to accommodate. So it's a very, it's a generalized response, but I don't want to take too much time on that. That was the one comment I wanted to say. I know we have John and Stephanie, who both sit on our budget committee, if they wanted to say anything, piggybacking on that. Jeremiah?
Yeah, that'd be great. If they want to jump in, we'd be happy to hear from them. But I do see the screen, the tracker is on our screens here, everyone. So once again, in case you may have forgotten, we have this nice tool that that many people have worked so hard to keep organized and to keep nice and useful for us for our easy reference. So you should obviously just be looking at these items and under the housing link. You all are familiar probably at this point, most of you anyway. So I guess we can, I don't know if we want to quickly look. Did everyone take a look at it? Everyone has it, right? Nobody has any problems. If you have had problems then, or don't know what this budget tracker is, feel free to connect, after the committee meeting with staff, because you need to get into it, obviously, to give your input on what we have here. So these right here are the first ones. I guess we can just quickly look at them. There are agency responses that we've gotten here. So the first one is to provide more housing for special needs households, such as seniors or the formerly homeless. So as you can see, basically, I'm just going to save you a lot of time, and you can see on the screen that there is a good amount of the agency will accommodate this issue within existing resources. So of course, I don't, for those who's not the first rodeo, we can ask for clarification or push them more on a lot of what often tend to be very vague and generalized set of answers to to our requests. So I don't know. So can we scroll down just a little bit past the first three? Yeah, because you see here, agency, the agency will accommodate. We also have asked, for example, expand programs for housing inspections to correct code violations. We don't want backlogs. We want to continuously have accessible and quick, easy access for code violations, particularly because they're presenting health and safety issues during the pandemic. We want to have additional inspectors hired. It's again, that answers the agency will try to accommodate this issue within existing resources. We asked also for more funding for our tenant harassment units, so that the city can be looking to actually give some teeth to the laws that were boned up. The tenant harassment laws were improved within the last few years, but some courts have been loath to apply them really firmly or strongly in a way that I think, in my opinion, they should be, because I think the intent of the council when they passed these increased protections was to improve the ability to get harassment findings. Anyway, again, the agency will try to accommodate the issue within existing resources. Also expand programs for housing inspections. So everything to do with HPD's code violations or tenant harassment units, they're saying, we'll see, we'll try within existing resources. Then down at the bottom, the last two, there is public housing, provide funding for the purchase of additional services, vans with additional computers, tablets, and supporting supplies, which may aid residents with annual online recertifications and maintenance requests and other limitations due to COVID-19. The agency said, NYCHA, that it will require further study of this request. And then finally here, DOB for expanding code enforcement to provide funding to hire an assistant director for the Office of the Tenant Advocate to prioritize areas that have been rezoned, including East Harlem. DOB said that this project was funded in a prior fiscal year and the scope is now underway. So obviously we could ask for clarification and details on that, and see precisely how it is that it's underway, because that's a good thing. If there's something that's underway that we've been asking for, that our constituents have asked us to request, things that we see meet needs, then obviously we're happy when we can see that sort of progress and saying that there is funding allocated and that, you know, that things are moving. But of course we want to see precisely how is it moving, how to what level has it been funded, etc. So. Any other comments or questions? Let me see. Okay. Yeah, Candy, go ahead.
Well, is there any way that I can, do I sound like an echo?
Yeah, there's definitely an echo.
Okay, can you hear me now?
It's no echo now, but it sounds like you're really muffled and distant.
Okay, I just want to know.
That's better.
I've been trying to print this out in a larger print and it still won't come out that way. It comes out very small. So is there any way you can adjust that?
What comes out small? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
The print. Can
The
you hear
print?
me? The print, this grid right now that we're looking at.
Oh, I don't know. I'm just Marlene sharing her screen. It looks normal to me. I don't know
Yes,
if anyone else having that problem. I don't know. If
it
people
looks
know what
normal
Candy's
on the
talking
screen,
about.
but when I'm gonna print it, it comes out so small, too small.
Oh, I honestly have no idea. I don't know if anybody here is Zoom savvy and can message Candy here.
Yeah, thank you.
But meanwhile, does anybody, I see no hands. So you do realize that I just briefly quickly went over and I will talk, we should, you should familiarize yourself with these requests. If you want to know more what they mean, feel free to email me or talk about it now. All of that is perfectly permissible. But we will, be moving quickly. The process, the clock is ticking. So as our folks on the budget committee can second. Xavier, go ahead.
Just real quick, as noted on the calendar, we'll have our full board on the 16th, I think, because we have to have a response in 30 days after it is released. And so that's why we've shifted the calendar around. So it's important that we work rather quickly. For those members of the public, just to explain, anything that you see ending with a C is a capital request, meaning structural, building, repair. Anything that is an E is an expense. So it's a program. So right there, thank you, Marlene. Provide more housing for special needs households such as seniors or for the formerly homeless. So again, you'll see that C request there, and that's under the housing preservation development. Just so again, for our attendees, and I'm sure some of you know this, but just so everyone's on the same page, DOB, Department of Buildings, NYCHA, we all know. So again, this is how it's broken down within our budget year to year. So that's real quick. But I mean, other than that, I mean, it's, I think, just reemphasizing our position through the data and the statements would be my recommendation. But again, I'm open to the committee's recommendations as well.
Hi, Jeremiah, if I may.
Absolutely.
Okay, I would require me to take down the grid. Is that fine?
Yeah, that's okay. Sure.
Okay, so I'll just go back to the slide that just gives you all some pointers of what you should be thinking about moving forward regarding budget. One second. Yeah, so this is just to help you all moving forward, what you should be thinking about when you look at that grid that you just saw with the new, with the budget request that you put in for fiscal, that you all made in September that now were reflected in that tracker for fiscal year 2022. And ultimately, The document is a statement on the preliminary budget that's going to come out of the full body of CB11. And any suggestions that you give this evening or before February 15th is when that information needs to be given to OMB. By February 15th, that document needs to be given to OMB. So any suggestions that the Housing Committee makes and any committee on the board, that's going to be funneled to the Budget Committee. They're going to sit down and look at it, and then the final document will come from the input from each committee, finalized by the Budget Committee, then the staff, and that's going to be submitted to OMB. But this is just some guidelines for you all this evening.
Thank you, Marlene, for sharing that. It was really good to think about because this is an important part. This budget process is an important part of the work that we do. It can translate into concrete funds for projects that will affect quality of life for East Harlem residents. So these are important. So, you know, as Xavier alluded to earlier when talking about the Esplanade, sometimes they have to come up time and time again, and we have to clamor for it over and over. And, you know, as the second pointer says, further justify those project requests which were not recommended for funding. So anyway, I would just exhort you all to Xavier, you have something to add to that?
Yeah, no, thank you. Sorry to chime in because again, I just want to reiterate that having a conversation with Councilmember Ayala and others, oftentimes they appropriate funding, for example, in this case, in NYCHA capital repair with a boiler.
Bye.
Everything all right?
Yeah, just play, sorry, just got a little with the little cousin, sorry.
Oh, okay. But you appropriate funds, so she would appropriate and set aside funds with the boiler, and it wouldn't be enough to actually get it done. And so every year a little bit more goes into the pot. It's the same thing that happened previously with the Esplanade, is that certain amounts get put aside, but it's not enough to fund it in full, it's in part. So that's just something to keep in mind, that in our justification for it is that, you know, again, it wasn't fully funded, it's funded in part. So we need to calculate, get the answers to how much that was and justifying it with our district needs. That's how you kind of marry the two. So thank you. That's all.
Appreciate that. Okay. All right, everyone. So, you know, there's not a whole lot of requests. Oh, also look at the statement of district need. That's the other part of this is the housing sections are not overly long. Statement of district needs obviously is fairly ample, but you should familiarize yourself with it as thoroughly as possible. You know, the housing portion, at least for what's related to this budget discussion, is not too much. So yeah, so take a look at that as well, because if there's any suggestions for text edits or think that there's maybe some aspect of housing needs in East Harlem that are not reflected currently in the narrative, that's also something that we can bring up, right? But there's interplay between the actual capital and expense requests and then the narrative. Yeah, so that's that. But really do please look at that, you know, because that way everybody has a different take and different, you know, they have a different skill set, different knowledge base. And we all think about different aspects of housing as well. So I would like to hear from you all, so it's not just the same, you know, 2-3 of us opining on all of this. I want as many diverse opinions as possible on this. So I appreciate that. And Marguerite, I want to also just note that I see that you say you hope water filter to the buildings will be included because the water currently smells and tastes like lawn or dirt. So, and can you just put into, I would also like to, well, I want to connect with you more as well post meeting, so that we can talk a little more about that, because I want to know some details about that, because I actually have some colleagues who are working on some water quality cases, but it's kind of it's not a completely charted area, but it's a real, obviously, critical area, a condition that needs to be looked at and affects a lot of people. Okay, so are there any other questions or comments with respect to the budget process? Okay, I don't see any hands, so we will, okay, thank you, Marguerite. I got your email. I'm actually going to copy it now. All right, perfect, before I forget it. And all right, so now moving on, old business. Does anybody on the committee have any old business that they would like to discuss? And Xavier said we need that as testimony. Oh yeah, okay, great. Okay, so no old business from anyone. Then we'll move on. Any new business? Okay, no new business. One last thing that I did actually, it's more of an announcement, but I forgot it. Marlene, when is our housing forum? There's a, I'm gonna make this announcement.
31st of March.
March 31st, folks, if you have in your networks or in your communities, you can spread, we, along with HPD, are gonna be doing a forum for tenants rights forum or resource fair, sort of like with a panel with legal services providers, attorneys, and other agency representatives. So March 31st, that is when it will be happening. And more details certainly will be coming out, and concrete ones for sure next committee meeting. The final thing I want to announce, unless there's one that pops up after this slide that I don't know about, but written testimony regarding the mayor's preliminary budget for fiscal year 2022 will be accepted via email to MN, so that's M as in Mary, N as in Nancy, 11 at cb.nyc.gov until February 10th, 2021. Okay, so that's it. So if I don't have any other comments, questions from anybody, whether the committee or public, I will entertain a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, so moved by John Green. Is there a second?
Second,
That was Candy, right?
yes.
Okay, great, Candy. All right, so I think this one is uncontroversial. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Oh, any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so the meeting's adjourned at 8:35 p.m. Thank you all very much for your participation. I truly appreciate it, and I look forward to connecting with some of you later as well. Have a good evening.
Good night.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Mhm.